Hey everyone, Joshua Kirk here with you once again, and now it's time for episode 284 of Album of the Day. Before I get into the video, I'd like to, wish you all a happy Valentine's Day. This video is probably going to be uploaded sometime. It is probably being uploaded sometime after that, but hope you all have a great Valentine's Day, even though it's pretty chilly out there. So without further ado, let's just get right to the review. So today's artist is a Japanese singer-songwriter that I am just now discovering thanks to the release of her new record, but certainly an artist that plenty of my peers on YouTube, including The Needle Drop as well as Not Real Music, had been praising over like her older stuff as well as like this most recent album she put out. She definitely is kind of a, somewhat of a, a vital figure in kind of, Japanese underground music. I am talking about the artist known as Ichiko Aoba, and I am here to review her new album, her most recent record, which dropped on December 2nd, 2020. And the album is called Windswept, Adan, and I believe this may be like her fourth or fifth record, I'm not so sure, because this album, like it is probably for most people right now, it is my introduction to Ichiko's music, even though she'd been putting out records for a while, and I know her last project came out in 2018, that was the album QP, and I've heard people say that her older stuff was very stripped back and very much, based around her voice and her acoustic guitar. But on this record, she's expanded her sound, incorporating more electronics and strings and woodwinds and all kinds of things. Oh yeah, and percussion and piano to create definitely probably her most sort of vibrant and maybe her most accessible record to date with these bigger arrangements, but yet the songs still feel very like abstract and kind of out there at the same time. And it also feels like a very serene listening experience as well. Thus, I am very pleased to say that upon listening to this, even though I kind of came in thinking, I could really like this, but I didn't have like very high expectations going in. But I will say that upon listening to this, I am very happy to say that I think this record is brilliant. And frankly, probably the most calming thing I've heard from 2020, because we all know 2020 was a hellscape of a year, and that, a lot of the music seemed to be dealing head on with kind of, what we were dealing with, with this year, even if most of it was written and recorded in 2019. This album, though, it does have some introspection to it as well, but it also feels just very resilient and meditative as well, and don't we all kind of need this sort of music right now? The album opens with the song Prologue, which features these very dense layers of pipe organ that are just very gorgeous and kind of chilling at the same time. Very beautiful kind of atmospheric singing in the background, which sort of gives us a taste of one thing Ichiko does pretty well, is sort of creating these very ambient layers of sound out of just her voice and creating this very like sort of languid effect that's very killer. Certainly a very patience testing, albeit very strong opener for the record, just kind of easing you into this experience. The song Pilgrimage is this very spellbinding ballad with delicate layers of acoustic guitar. The flutes, the little notes they're playing throughout the song just sprinkle the song in such a cool way musically. The strings are very nice as well. The percussion definitely gives it a nice thump as well. This sounds like the kind of thing that could be the score to like a Studio Ghibli film, and frankly this entire album may as well be soundtracking that kind of thing. And that is a huge compliment, by the way, because I genuinely think those films are awesome and certainly beautifully animated and kind of films that, you know, tap into some pretty relatable and kind of personal subject matter too. And Ichiko's voice essentially is the cherry on top of this whole thing. It has kind of this mystical bird-like quality to it that I really enjoy. The next song, Porcelain, is also very beautiful with these electric guitar notes as well as some harps syncopating with it very nicely. The strings and woodwinds also sound very strong in here. Like in the chorus, those high notes that the strings play are just so progressive and totally sound awesome. And also another track where it just definitely sounds like something that would be in a Studio Ghibli film, but also just gives you the feeling like I'm floating. And this is a very kind of floating in this very sort of light blue colored kind of pool of water, sort of like the album cover which features her literally floating in a pool of water. The song HORO is one of those tracks that definitely is a very cool idea. The kind of high-pitched vocals along with the little notes of pipe organ. However, not one of my favorite tracks on here. To me, the song sort of feels like one very good idea that isn't quite fleshed out and just kind of repeated over and over again for like 2 minutes, and it's just kind of a bit of an awkward filler moment in this otherwise pretty phenomenal record. The song Easter Lily is definitely very lovely. It's and definitely has this sense of introspection to it, not just in terms of maybe what the lyrics are, but also, musically it just sounds like her sort of, kind of having to accept a little moment of isolation from the world. Like, because, as, calming and as meditative as this record is, it is kind of meditative with sort of, being, alone and not around other people. So in a way, this record is kind of a relatable record considering, quarantine, the situation with that. And I will say that, I don't quite, understand the lyrics, at least not yet, because, they're all sung in Japanese, but it is clear that from songs like this that, Ichiko is singing from all kinds of kind of emotional places that she's been through, and this song is a perfect example of that. And plus, the guitar and Celeste definitely flow with one another very well, and also these strings and kind of otherworldly vocal layers are definitely a nice little finish at the end. And the song Parfum de Tolles is this very gorgeous kind of delicate piano ballad with the piano is playing all these very interesting and kind of somewhat odd kind of abstract notes. And there's even a point in the song where it sounds like the piano is being kind of manipulated and sampled a little bit, so it sounds kind of like a loop, or something like that. It's a very cool effect and sort of shows that clearly Ichiko is dipping her toes into a kind of abstract electronic music kind of sound. And also, I think the chirping birds in the background are a nice little bit of atmosphere. Makes me feel like I'm kind of meditating out there while I'm hearing some woman play the piano for me just to get me to fall asleep or something like that. Like it's definitely kind of a lullaby type moment on the record, as is the next track, which it's ambient layers made out of just like no synth, just vocals, is definitely a very cool moment on the record. Occurred, even though it is definitely one of the shorter tracks here. The song Sagu Palm Song is definitely one of the more melancholy moments on the record. The fingerpick guitars, so the fingerpick guitars, the very lovely kind of dreamy vocals on the track, and it is clear from listening to this track that Ichiko is obviously singing from a place of kind of introspection, as well as maybe dealing with maybe the loss of a loved one, or maybe a relationship that's ended, or something like that. It sounds kind of like the chamber. It sounds kind of like the chamber folk Japanese sung equivalent to like maybe a classic Elliott Smith ballad. The song Chinu Haju is so the song Chinu Haji is another little instrumental track on here. It features these like loops or like field recordings of wind that sound as though that has this kind of lo-fi quality to it that makes it sound like it was recorded on some like vintage like dictaphone or something like that, put over some very lovely layers of what sounds like maybe Ichiko's voice, put through some sort of interesting reverb to make it kind of sound like synth or something like that. There probably is some synth in there as well, and also the very calming sound, the very soothing sound of wind chimes as well. It is a very cool, much needed moment of just kind of, taking a step back and just being in the moment after, considering the track track before it was definitely probably one of the sadder cuts on the record. Now, some of the song titles beyond this point are kind of hard to pronounce, so I'm just going to call them just by their track number. There may be a couple other songs that I'll be able to say the name of, but like from here on out, I'm just gonna call these next few tracks on this record by their number. So track 10 is definitely a highlight on this record. A very moving vocal performance from Ichiko on this track. Yet another song on here where it's mostly just her. That she's kind of channeling that sense of isolation that definitely is, again, quite relatable for our situation right now. So it's simultaneously a non-escapist and escapist listening experience. Periods. And all the little notes and the little registers she goes for on this track are just flat out killer. Killer. Track 11 is definitely a much more haunting cut on the record. Love how kind of dark and chilling it sounds. But then about midway through the song, the strings give it this really bright sense of optimism that I really like, and all those little notes they're playing are just so complex and progressive. Seriously, this is the kind of record that even if you're not usually into this style of music, if you enjoy maybe some great progressive rock or something like that, or if you enjoy maybe a bit of ambient like metal or something like that, there are plenty of metalheads that are absolutely praising the shit out of this thing. So that sort of tells you, what amazing appeal this album really has. The track "Dawn in the Aden" is another very just like crushing. Is just another very crushingly beautiful moment on the record. I just love like the flutes. So just like the guitars, the strings, the flutes, and also kind of the layers, the like multi-track layers of them. Just makes it sound very it's not one-dimensional and it's certainly not two-dimensional, but rather it's like a three-dimensional kind of folk song in terms of all the things it can do, and all these instruments blend together so harmoniously throughout this song, and I am just like, I feel lighter listening to these songs. Like, this is the kind of record that kind of, can put me to sleep without boring me or anything like that. That the song, the song Ohayashi is definitely a bit of a change of pace. This is one song, it doesn't really sound like other tracks on the record, in that it's probably the closest Ichiko comes to creating this abstract jazz piece. The vibraphone just sounds so awesome on this track, and I love how it's layered, so it literally sounds like there's 4 people playing their own vibraphone on this track, kind of, creating these little dense, sort of very dense and kind of, three-dimensional layers, basically. And Ichiko's guitar playing, I think, manages to blend with these layers very nicely, as does some kind of thumping percussion that sounds like, that kind of sounds like maybe some native, some sort of like Japanese percussion instruments or something like that I'm not all that familiar with. It definitely is a cool little, it definitely shows a more freewheeling, almost jam-like side to this record that I really dig. And then the album closes out with this song that is kind of a bit of a, is a surprisingly kind of dreary way to close the record. If the previous track felt like the victory lap, this song sort of feels to me kind of like, it's the kind of song that makes me kind of sad that, this beautiful experience is kind of just ending for a moment. But in a good way, though. Like, I love the way in which all these different instruments enter the song, and also I'm hearing, like, elements of, like, previous tracks in the record in here as well, like the way that the time signature in which her singing is in sounds pretty similar to what it sounded like on Pilgrimage, probably the first actual song on this project. And also the notes of flute are definitely kind of a highlight for me on this track. And then it kind of ends. And then about like 4 minutes into this track, and then about like 4 minutes into the track, it pretty much all ends musically. But then for like the last 2 minutes of the song, we get field recordings of like ocean waves crashing, and they're so beautifully recorded too. Like, I don't know like what they use to like, I definitely can tell that they went to an actual ocean and recorded this, but like it just sounds like so like it just sounds so vibrant and very beautifully recorded. Like, it kind of has this surround sound quality that I really dig, even if you're only listening to it through headphones like I am. Like, and that moment in the record is really cool because right after the actual track, having kind of this tragic sense of it all ending, we have this moment of optimism and sort of resilience. This water reminds us that, there's still more to come in life. more to come in life. So yeah, wow, what an incredible, very gorgeous record this is. Like I said, this is one of those records where even if you're not typically into this style of music, I think, I still can recommend this a lot because, if you're looking for an album that, is gonna take you to this whole different place and sort of, distract you from the dark realities of a pandemic era world, this is definitely the record for you. The instrumentation is arranged and played so gracefully throughout. Ichiko singing, I think, is very strong as well. Like, she totally delivers this sense of beauty to each and every song. It flows in a cohesive way too. There's pretty much very little in the way of complaints I have about this record, other than maybe a couple of tracks, feel like a really good idea that's just kind of not quite fleshed out, and instead, they just have to make it go on for like 1.5 minutes, and sort of count that as an interlude, even though, the majority of these interludes are quite great, and definitely tracks that I definitely would hate to leave out of the track list for sure. But overall, very good album. Definitely a record that makes me feel very I just feel good every time I listen to this record. It's the kind of thing that can put me to sleep, but it doesn't feel boring. I still feel like I can stay awake for at least 2 more minutes, because this is one of those records that basically just begs for your attention. So going with a light 9 out of 10 for this new Ichiko Aoba album, Windswept Adan, and I'll see you for episode 285.